Hey guys, before we get started today, I just wanted to say that I hope everyone out there had an amazing New Year's. Going forward, I would like to start doing more polls like how I did with this video, so I can get a better idea of what you'd like to see moving forward in 2026. So please make sure to be on the lookout for these. I'll try to post them once every week. I'll try to narrow down a day, but I'm aiming more towards Sunday at the moment, but we'll see. You can also leave some suggestions below in the comments as well, and I hope you enjoy. I'd always thought that life functioned like a system of complex computer programs. For example, when you touch a stove, you get burnt. If you spend too much time in cold temperature, you get hypothermia. If you apply too much strain to a limb, it breaks. Every consequence is resultant from a previous action. A simple conditional statement, if you will. Now, I can't confirm the existence or lack thereof in regards to a creator, a god, if you will. I obviously don't have that authority, but if one were to exist, it would make sense that this is just the way we were programmed, how the reality that we see right in front of us was meant to function. Just a system of codes. But just like man-made programs, nothing's perfect. And with such a large and complicated one like life itself, even a god would have to make mistakes, right? I can pinpoint the exact moment where it all started happening. At that moment, I wasn't in a great spot in my life. Now, I wasn't depressed or anything, just kinda dissociated with everything around me. My life had stagnated, to say the least. I had a feeling that my best years were behind me, and being a mere 32 years of age, this wasn't a good feeling. I had gotten fired from my last job when I was 29. Luckily though, I had gotten a new one nearly right after. Now, it wasn't one I liked, but I suppose beggars can't be choosers. However, my office was only around a 10-minute walk from my studio apartment, so that was an upside. Anyhow, it was a late night work session. Most everybody else had gone home, but I stayed due to the amount of work that I had procrastinated from weeks prior. I wanted to get a good chunk of it done. At one point, I got up in order to pour myself some coffee. As I walked into the kitchen, I noticed a door located on one of the corners. The thing is, I didn't think I'd ever seen it before, but I also rarely went into the kitchen. I find small talk with my particular coworkers to be incredibly excruciating. I just assumed that I didn't pay enough attention to notice it. It was a rather large area after all. Out of sheer curiosity, I decided to see where it led. I was honestly expecting it to be a pantry of sorts. However, I was surprised as hell when I opened it. It was an empty, medium-sized room with smooth gray walls and floors. I walked around exploring the place for a while, before quickly realizing that there was literally nothing in there. It was pretty damn weird in all honesty. I mean, what the hell was this place, and what purpose did it have? As I was about to turn around and head out, I noticed what appeared to be small objects in one of the corners of the room. Now, I could have guaranteed that they weren't there before. In fact, I nearly jumped out of my skin when I saw it. I quickly walked over and examined them, discovering that they appeared to be a couple of rifle rounds. I just threw them back down and left that room. I was beginning to feel uneasy as hell. I ran back into the office and prepared to head home. I just assumed that the work had been getting to my head. To make sure, I looked around in order to see if anybody else was still there. The janitor was, so I made the assumption that he was the one that placed the bullets there. But in retrospect, that made absolutely no sense. The sky was already dark as I started to make my way back home. It was around 8 p.m. when I left. Feeling somewhat hungry, I decided to stop by at a pizza place on the way. Now, I had been to this place numerous times, so I pretty much memorized the opening and closing times for every single day of the week. That's why I found it so shocking that the place was closed. It was open until 9 p.m. on weekdays. Whatever, I thought. This isn't even the strangest thing that's happened to me that day. The place must have just abruptly changed their hours. I looked over at the opening/closing times displayed on the windows to confirm it. However, this part made less sense. 6 out of the 7 days maintained the same schedule. It was only today, Tuesday, that it changed so that it closed 1 hour earlier. I just went home and made something else to eat instead. These kind of small, unexplainable incidents started happening to me more and more often throughout the next few months. Things would be misplaced from where I'd left them. People I didn't know seemed to recognize me, while people I'd known for years seemed to have no clue who I was. And I'd keep finding bullets in the most random of places. One of the strangest incidents was when I finally decided to go and see a psychologist. After telling him everything that had been happening, he just stared at me for the longest time, before saying this: "This isn't where you really are. This is just temporary, but it's better that you don't wake up right now," before literally leaving me by myself in his office. The thing is, while these events were incredibly disturbing, they were still far and few between. In other words, they were still essentially manageable. That all changed on a Saturday a few weeks later. The previous night, I had been out drinking with a few friends. I guess I went a little too hard, because I barely remembered anything when I woke up. The thing that I deemed rather peculiar was that I didn't feel the signs of a hangover. But just like the pizza place, I didn't bother thinking too much about it. These were small details, after all. I turned on my laptop and started going through my emails. Having an inbox filled with random bullshit always bothered me. About a few minutes into that, I got a text from my buddy Ansel, who I had gone out with last night. "Dude, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I actually think Matt might have gotten laid last night. Shit was nuts. You should have came, man." I must have stared at that text for 10 minutes. You see, there were 2 things wrong with what Ansel had just told me. 1, I vividly remember going out with him on Friday. Now, I don't remember most of the actual night, but I sure as hell remember getting off work and then entering our first bar. Second of all, who the hell was Matt supposed to be? I don't know anybody named Matt. That was it. I've gone crazy, I thought to myself. But then I started to calm down. This kind of stuff happened to me sometimes. They were just momentary blips in the matrix. This couldn't have been that big of a deal. With this rationalization in my head, I just continued on with the day. I didn't have anything planned, so I decided to stay in and binge YouTube. And that's exactly what I did. I remembered it started out normal at first. I watched the channels that I usually do. At one point, I found myself watching a documentary about human trafficking. It was a bit weird. I couldn't for the life of me remember how I had gotten there. I listened to the narrator talk. I began looking at the recommended/related videos. One caught my eye. The thumbnail was that of a man in military gear, sitting on top of a Humvee in a desert. However, the title was what drew me into it. Where do you think you are right now? Because it's not where you're supposed to be. I remember just sitting there, trying to understand what the title was getting at. This was strange, wasn't it? I decided to click on it. Now, the video itself was extremely shaky and incomprehensible. It looked erratic, in a sense. I could tell that it was filmed inside, but I'm not really sure what kind of place. I could make out what appeared to be rotting wooden walls, but that was about it. However, the audio was the only really messed up part. There was screaming, desperate, hoarse, painful ones, about 3 sets in total, and they wouldn't stop. That's when I noticed the duration of the video. 26,288 hours and 22 minutes. Now, I was pretty sure that that wasn't possible because of YouTube's upload duration limitations. I closed the video and then the laptop. That was enough internet for today. I yawned and stretched my arms out. I felt so tired for some reason. That's when I checked the time. It was 11 p.m. I got out of my chair and opened my blinds. It was indeed dark outside. What the hell? I thought. I knew for sure that I'd opened my laptop around 1 p.m. There was no way I'd sat here for 10 hours. At that moment, I knew that something must have been very wrong here. But what? What the hell could have been happening to me? I checked my phone. 78 missed calls and texts. I looked through them. Most of them were from my mother. Some were from my friends. A few texts were even from Brandy, my ex-girlfriend of around 3 years. I really miss you is what they say. Why the hell would they say that now? I tossed my phone and started pacing around my apartment. My head started pounding, but it wasn't just a headache. My left arm and ribs were also burning with this intense pain that I'd never felt before. I went to the bathroom, looking for something that could help. Eventually, I found some morphine. I felt sheer bliss as I injected it into my bloodstream. But then, another troubling thought went into my head. Why the hell do I have morphine in my bathroom? I couldn't recall a situation that could have led me to having it in my possession. I walked out the bathroom and started pacing again. This was just a nightmare, I tried telling myself. But why was the pain so vivid? I decided that I really needed to get some rest. I started heading towards my bed when I was jolted by the sounds of explosions coming from inside my bedroom. I flipped shit and ran the hell out of my apartment. I wandered around the streets for a while, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go, and not even beginning to understand what in the actual hell was going on. Eventually, I came across what appeared to be a group of 4 men, huddled together at a crosswalk. They all had their backs turned to me, so I couldn't make out any facial features, but I could also tell that they weren't moving at all. I don't know how to explain it, but the air started to feel hostile around me. It felt like I was heading right into danger. I started backing away, but not before the men turned around to look at me. But ironically enough, they had no faces to look at me with. Just smooth, empty skin where an expression should have been. In an instant, they began charging at me. I started running, as I tried to evade what was surely a horrific fate behind me. I began to notice that my surroundings had drastically changed. I wasn't in the city that I had been living in the past 3 years anymore. Instead, I was somewhere both familiar and not at the same time. Like I had been to the place before, but didn't quite remember where it was. It got to the point where I couldn't keep running. I remember collapsing onto the pavement and turning back in horror to see the group of faceless entities still thundering their way towards me. I just sat there, waiting for whatever twisted outcome to finally come and claim me. I didn't want to deal with this shit anymore. However, as the men got to within about 30 meters away from me, they just stopped. A few seconds passed before one of their throats seemed to get slit open by an invisible force. The others looked around frantically before 2 of them literally seemed to blow up. The last one just started sprinting away. In absolute shock at what I had just seen, I pulled myself back up and started walking around again. As I did, my mind seemed to be getting clearer. This new city I was in, I started to recognize it more, but what was I doing there? Eventually, my vision started to fade, but in the conventional sense. It was like the area around me was getting too bright. It got to the point where I could barely see anything, and I passed out a few seconds later. I awoke in a rundown cabin. I heard a bunch of commotion as figures swarmed around me, talking loudly to each other. I looked over to see a man in military gear kneeling beside me, administering a needle into my arm. We made eye contact. Wait, I recognized him. "What's up, Dempsey? You're safe now. We finally found you." He smiled at me. It was Matt. I did know a Matt. I started looking around the room to find it filled with other military guys. There were also 2 skinny, broken-looking men, also being tended to. I was still somewhat disoriented, so I passed out again. I woke back up again in a hospital room. A man in a suit was sitting by the foot of my bed, looking at his phone. He smiled at me when he saw that I was up. "Mr. Dempsey, how are you feeling?" He went on to explain how I was actually a Navy SEAL, and I had been sent onto a mission to capture a notorious human trafficker who had been tracked down to an abandoned town in Belarus. However, things went south and nearly everybody on my team had died, leaving only 3 of us, including me, to be captured and used as leverage towards the US government. We were held hostage there for 3 years, constantly being tortured during that time. It was only a few days ago before they finally found us, also managing to kill the trafficker. After dropping that bomb on me, the man left me alone to contemplate. It all started to come back to me. The mission, the ambush. However, I didn't remember the torture. That was when my memory became foggy and was replaced by the life I thought I'd been living just a few days prior. The evidence of my physical deterioration was evident. I was bone skinny, had cuts all over my body, and was missing my left ring finger, but I don't remember experiencing any of it. I told all of this to my nurse, but she probably thought I was insane. Who knows, maybe I am. However, I asked for a laptop so that I could type all this down. My request was granted. The first thing I had done was search up major events that had happened during the 3 years that I was out of commission. It all lined up. The Cubs won in 2016. Trump took office in 2017. Carrie Fisher died. I knew it all. I even searched up Brandy's Facebook profile. She had the same picture she'd updated only a few months ago. There was no way that the last few years of my life had all been imagined. Now, I can begin to speculate what happened to me. Was it a glitch or corruption in the Matrix? I couldn't say. Was it a mistake by God? Possibly. But maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was deliberate. Maybe this God knew exactly what it was doing. I was going to grab a coffee this morning at a Tim Hortons I don't usually go to. The drive-thru was extremely long, so I just decided to go inside. It was completely empty aside from 2 men. Both were around their 50s or 60s, and they were sitting at a corner table. The men locked onto me as soon as I walked in, but I didn't really think much of it. Just some old creepy men. That's nothing new. I went ahead and minded my business and just ordered my coffee. And while I waited, one of these men came up to me. He just kind of stood near me. So I moved out of the way and said, "Oh, sorry, am I in your way?" He says, No, sorry. Can I show you something?" Of course, I'm kind of cautious about this. And say, "Well, that depends on what it is." He proceeds to show me his screensaver. It is a young woman who looks identical to me. I mean, if you put us side by side, we could be twins. He tells me it's his daughter, and he was just taken aback when I came in. I laughed and told him I agree we look extremely similar, and when I asked her name, he told me her name was Jade. This was another blip on my what the fuck is happening radar. When I was a kid, all I wanted was to be named Jade. All my gaming tags were a variation of Jade, and numbers. When I played make-believe with friends, I was always Jade. I even told strangers my name was Jade. It was a strange obsession that I think a lot of kids have with names that they wish were their own. I just smiled and said it was a very pretty name. He explained that she was in Hong Kong. I told him that would be a fun trip, and he proceeded to tell me this crazy story of how she was scammed into taking a package to China, and then she got arrested in Hong Kong. This exact story actually happened about 3 years ago, in a town about 4 hours away, to a woman my family was loosely tied to. I look at him and say, "You know I want to be sympathetic, but are you fucking with me right now?" He told me he swears on the Bible, and he isn't trying to make me uncomfortable. He just has a hard time not talking about it, of course. Now, I work inside the court system, specifically with mentally ill offenders, many of which are struggling with addiction. I start to do my regular checks for signs of intoxication and mental health symptoms. This man seems completely lucid. Now I jump to see he's trying to pickpocket me. This is a good area, but you never know. My belongings are still on me, and the other man he was sitting with is standing about 5 feet away. This is when he starts to tell me about his daughter, and how she wanted to get into law enforcement, and was enrolled in the same school and discipline I recently graduated from. I'm not necessarily someone who looks like I work in the field I do, and I definitely don't advertise it on my person. He says he won't keep me any longer, shakes my hand and says his name was Gary. He introduces his friend as Cameron, but he says people call him Taco Man, because when he drinks he likes to make everyone tacos. This is my final time to get out of here. My ex-boyfriend, who I was with for a very long time, was jokingly called the Taco Man, because he would get drunk and make everyone tacos. They held the door for me as I left, and I watched him get into a pretty nice, newer truck and drive off. I have never felt more strange. My best friend and I were out running errands. We went in one store and the cashier said to us, "Oh my god, are you guys sisters? You look very alike." We told the cashier when we were younger we used to always get that, and we haven't heard that in years. We go to the next store and we go to the cashier, and again they asked, "Are you two sisters? You guys look alike." We responded with the same thing as earlier, that we hadn't got that in years, and we had got it twice today. We're now in the car driving through town, and we're just chatting, and we're both saying how funny it is that we were told we look alike twice today, when we probably haven't heard that in the better part of 10 years. Now, when we're together, conversations can get stupid and silly, and we just talk about anything. So for some reason, we started talking about the dentist, and I was asking my friend if she still has her wisdom teeth, or if she had gotten her tonsils removed. When we get home to my house, I parked on the street. To get to my house, you have to go down the whole entire street, and then turn around to park on the right side of the road. So we went down the whole street and turned around, which means we were able to get a view of the whole entire street, to see if someone was driving or walking, parking, etc. At this time, we have not seen anyone but ourselves on the street. It was cold outside, not really a common time for people to be walking. We exit the car and walk up my driveway, which is a long driveway to the left of the house. We are about 3/4 of the way there, and we hear someone call us. We turn around and there is a boy, probably 15 to 16 years old, up the driveway with us. Not in the street, not at the end of the driveway, but a couple feet away from us. I was immediately sketched out, because I knew no one was in the street, and now there was someone standing literally right behind me. I am instantly in protective mode and very confused. We begin to say hi, and then he asks us, "Can we be friends? How old are you?" Initially, we don't really respond, because at this point we don't know what to say, and we don't even know who he is or even where he came from. He then proceeds to say, "You girls look alike. Are you sisters?" At this point, I'm in fight or flight mode. I notice my friend is just kind of baffled. We tell him, "No, we're just best friends." At this point, I'm very confused, because this is now the third time we've gotten this today, but in a very different environment. His next question is, "Do you know what I want to be when I grow up?" He answers his own question before we can even answer, and he says, "I want to be a dentist." Neither of us are able to speak because his next question is, "Do you girls have wisdom teeth? How about your tonsils?" For some odd reason, we both answered these questions, and then he says, "Can I see? Open your mouths." I was not opening my mouth, but my best friend for some reason decided to open hers. I grabbed her. We told him we had to go and we ran inside. We're now sitting on the couch in complete shock, not even able to speak. My boyfriend is just as thoroughly confused because he watched us from the window and asked who he was, and we told him we have no idea. We don't even know where he came from. Fast forward to a few days later, I come home from work and my boyfriend at the time says that the kid came back looking for us and that he was going to come back another day. Thankfully, I never saw him again. To this day, we don't know where he came from and why he asked us those questions. and how he knew everything that we'd spoke about that day. So this happened about a year ago, and I still think about it all the time. I don't really know how to explain it without sounding crazy, but it's the experience that sent me down the whole quantum immortality rabbit hole. About a week before the main event, my friend Morgan and I were driving, and a car cut in front of us and kicked up a rock. It hit my windshield literally right in front of my face. For a split second, it felt like the rock almost went through the glass and into my face, even though I know it didn't. I turned on the windshield wipers thinking maybe it was the dust, but there was a chip with a tiny crack coming off of it. We both saw it, talked about how annoying it was, and I didn't worry too much about it because where I live, windshields get replaced for free all the time. That chip stayed there all week, directly in my line of sight. Fast forward to about a week later. I was supposed to meet Morgan for a night out, but I got out of work late, and by the time I got there, she was already a little drunk. I decided it was better to just drive her home, so I could relax and enjoy the rest of my night without having to worry about her. It was raining pretty hard. I was on the highway, doing the speed limit. There are about 5 lanes, and I was in the middle lane, with a bunch of cars behind me. I hydroplaned. I drive a sports car, and I have experience controlling it. I drift around corners sometimes, so I know how it responds. But this was different. I started fishtailing across the highway, within inches of the median multiple times, like back and forth across all the lanes. We ended up doing a full 180 and were facing the wrong direction in traffic, headlights coming straight towards us. As soon as the car stopped spinning, I booked a U-turn and floored it so we wouldn't get hit. Now this is the part that really messes with me. Morgan is someone who knocks out instantly when she's asleep. She's incredibly hard to wake up, like you could be mid-conversation and she's gone. She wakes up in that moment with a gasp and says, "We got into a 9-car pileup." I just stared at her because that absolutely would have happened if we'd hit the highway maybe 10 seconds later. After that, everything felt off. While I'm driving, I realize the chip in my windshield is gone. Completely gone. The chip that had been right in front of my face for a full week. No crack. Nothing. I have a dash cam, so I pulled over later and checked the footage. My dash cam records in 2 to 3 minute loops. The entire loop with the hydroplaning, the spinning, her waking up and saying that is just missing. Not corrupted. Not half there. Just gone. Like it never even happened. I'm still shaking as I type this. It's midnight on December 28th, and what happened a few hours ago has me questioning the boundary between our world and the unseen. Before I get into it, I need to clarify a few things. I'm completely sober. I don't do drugs, and alcohol is entirely out of the question for me, since I'm Muslim. My only guilty pleasure is my love for movies. I'm a big believer in owning my own media. I'm not a fan of the streaming era. I prefer to download my movies and series so I can watch them on my own terms. It's a habit that actually makes this story a lot scarier. I'm also not here to push my religion on anyone. I'm sharing this for context, because it explains why this rattled me so much. As I said before, I'm Muslim. In our traditional doctrine, we don't really buy into the multiverse or parallel reality theories. To us, those are philosophical ideas and not reality. We believe in one universe, shared by humans, and jinn, that has free will. Jinn are entities made of smokeless fire. There, we have a belief that since jinn are essentially plasma, or energy, they can interact with electricity and digital screens, using them almost like mirrors or portals. I was doing a rerun of Harry Potter, And in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, I was laying down with my headphones on. I was relaxed and in a slightly drowsy state, the one you're in right before you drift off, but I was still awake enough to follow the plot. At exactly 1 hour and 23 minutes and 36 seconds into the movie, when Hermione lowers her wand in Malfoy's face, the screen did something it shouldn't be physically capable of doing. The screen turned into a horror movie. Holes opened up in Hermione's face, and literal worms started crawling out of her skin. Her tongue dropped and started moaning. It was a vivid, trypophobic nightmare. I wasn't drowsy enough to be dreaming, as I was conscious enough to still react instantly. I hit pause. The screen froze on that horrific image. While the movie was paused, I took a screenshot on my computer. This next part defies logic. As I was looking at the paused, worm-infested face, the movie started changing back to normal while the player was still on pause. It was like an overlay was being pulled away, or the movie was healing itself in real time. I immediately checked the screenshot I had taken. The screenshot showed a perfectly normal, beautiful Hermione. No holes, no worms. Then I checked the file's MD5 hash. If the file itself had been altered or corrupted, the hash would have changed, but it hadn't. The data was clean. Like I said before, it's December and very cold here, and my PC is running an RTX 4060. For the tech literate out there, you know this card is ice cold and power efficient. My GPU was sitting at a chill 32 degrees Celsius, with a hotspot of 38 degrees Celsius. I never come close to 70 degrees Celsius, never, even while pushing it to the max. There's zero chance of hardware overheating, or graphical artifacts. This wasn't a GPU glitch. I've had them before. They're more like pixelated errors on the screen. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm just a guy who saw a digital file transform into something grotesque, and then wipe its own trail right in front of my own 2 eyes. I didn't think to screen record at the time, but I suspect a recording would have shown the same clean image the screenshot did. Has anyone else, especially those with similar spiritual backgrounds, experienced tech being manipulated like this before? I'd like to know if I'm alone in this, or if anyone else has seen their digital reality rewrite itself.